I guess the biggest gaming news from the last month, or certainly the highest profile release, is the new Legend of Zelda game titled Echoes of
Yes.
Wisdom. Echoes of
Yeah.
Wisdom. Echoes of Wisdom.
You can do that in post as well to really long it out.
Don't want to. Don't need to, mate. I'll be wasting my own time instead of everybody else's. This new top-down adventure. The new top-down adventure comes in part from Grezzo, who made the Link's Awakening remake on the Switch, and it contains the same toy box tilt-shifted aesthetic, but this brand new game is significantly larger in scope than the Game Boy blueprint of Link's Awakening, with a world that's apparently around 8 times bigger than Koholint Island, and in a massive shift to the formula of the series so far, sees Link being captured and the player being given control of Zelda to lead the charge in Link's rescue. The protagonist shift isn't the only thing to be a huge departure from other Zelda games, because the mechanics in this game are also totally different from Link's usual sword-wielding, arrow-shooting and bomb-chucking affairs from the other game. Instead, Zelda is given the Rod of Echoes, which allows her to capture the imprint of items and enemies from around the world to then summon at her behest. In exploration, this can look like building a bridge from beds to allow you to cross gaps, or summoning a trampoline to leap up a cliff, or conjuring up pots to hide in. In combat, you'll be summoning the echoes of enemies that you've beaten to fight on your behalf, and different enemies will be required to beat certain other enemies, with different mechanics coming into play, such as, ranged enemies, elemental enemies, or which monsters might be best suited to the particular terrain. It's all very, very clever, and it's clearly taken a leaf out of Tears of the Kingdom's playbook in terms of injecting the top-down Zelda games with a similar degree of creativity. But it's interesting thinking about Echoes of Wisdom as a companion piece to Tears of the Kingdom, because like Link's Awakening was to A Link to the Past. Link's Awakening was like the handheld sort of companion to the big console experience of A Link to the Past. Echoes of Wisdom feels like the handheld companion piece to Tears of the Kingdom, but obviously they're pretty on the same console. But because of that, it can aim lower in terms of its general scope and focus on doing fewer things really, really well. And it allows them then to try something a bit more left field within a tighter constraint of this established framework. I initially thought that these new mechanics in Echoes of Wisdom would get old quickly, especially in terms of combat. But the devs have made this whole world based around the mechanics it's asking you to use. So you're never massively overrun with enemies or needing to do quick, intricate movements. It allows you to pace yourself and gives you, a bit of wiggle room to think about what approach might be the best one for that situation that you're in.
Yeah.
There is also another mechanic in the game that sees you take on sword fighter form as Zelda, which basically just transforms you into Link for a short period of time if you want to clear the room quickly, or you need some extra to finish up a boss. You've got I don't know what it's called, a magic meter or an energy meter that it limits the use of this. So it is kind of a last resort type of thing, and you can't just be using it to get you through a dungeon if you want to maybe use some of that ability in the boss fight. But it does feel a little bit like a get out of jail free card from the devs, possibly showing that they didn't have complete faith in the Echoes mechanic alone. Maybe it's it's similar to when games put in a double jump in it, when it's not an essential mechanic. It's just I'm not sure if people are going to like this. Maybe this is a bit too hot. I don't know. I just let me do a double jump and then it'll just smooth out the edges, Yeah. But so it is a bit strange that it doesn't sort of go all in on that mechanic. And it does give you that little, like I said, little get out of jail free, but it's what it is. Echoes of Wisdom, it really is at its best when it's properly playing the Echoes mechanic, playing to the Echoes mechanic strength, because as a creative puzzle-solving device, it did give me really familiar tingles of satisfaction like you get in Tears of the Kingdom, and it allows you to play through the game experimenting with different techniques to solve certain recurring problems, or stumbling across a real surprise of how a certain item or enemy would work in a certain situation. It's for this reason that the dungeons in Echoes of Wisdom are some of the most fun I've had in a Zelda game in a long, long time. Whilst Tears of the Kingdom is a phenomenal game in every respect, the dungeons didn't have tight design that that you're used to. You could use a lot of the mechanics in Tears of the Kingdom to, just exploit them a bit to cheese your way through the dungeons. And whilst that is fun, puzzle solving has always been a huge part of Zelda games, and like with Breath of the Wild, you get those puzzle solving kicks in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild in the shrines more than the dungeons. The dungeons are, something else really, but the puzzle solving dungeons in Echoes of Wisdom are honestly quite possibly series best. Absolutely brilliant.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things that was really lovely for my playthrough of Echoes of Wisdom is that my daughter Nora, who is about to turn 4 in a couple of weeks' time, she really enjoyed watching me play the game, and it was just an absolute delight to sort of share it with her. At most days, she'd wake up and ask if I'd rescued Link yet, and it's just lovely. And when I unlocked something new in the game, like if I got like a new outfit for Zelda, or like when I found a horse you could ride on, stuff like that, I was like, I couldn't wait to show her because I knew she'd love it, and it was just really lovely. And also, she helped me with one of the stealth sections of the game, which I know like it's a bit of a dated mechanic having stealth sections, but like the nice thing about this is it gives you all these new mechanics to work in that environment. So it felt really, really fresh to sort of kind of go like, oh, remember this? Remember how annoying this was? But now you can do this. So, how are you going to do it? And I was actually struggling to get through this one section, and Nora just said, why don't you just make a pot to hide in? And that was exactly the right solution to this particular problem. I just had to make a pot, hide in it, and then like jump in the pot past like a guard's view. And then, it was just like, it was exactly it's exactly what I needed. It was just a wonderful moment for me. I was very, very proud. I think Echoes of Wisdom is at its best when it's owning what it is and not trying to be one of the other Zelda games. It feels like it's trying to split the difference between the traditional top-down Zelda games and the more open Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild entries, and it's not as successful when it comes to exploration in the game, which is a shame because the world is gorgeous. It's filled with great characters, really good writing as well, gorgeous locations, some great little mini dungeons, other cool stuff like that. But I think like the lack of immediacy with the combat means that you don't feel that sense of freedom that you can just dive into a situation. You can just sort of wing it, go anywhere, and just chop stuff down or take stuff on a whim, in the same way that you could in other Zelda games. But it also then puts stuff around the world that sort of makes you want to do that, but it never feels great. Like even when you get a horse to ride around on, which is if nothing else exceedingly adorable. But it doesn't help that the side quests in Echoes of Wisdom are a bit underwhelming. So like you never properly feel satisfied with exploring of your own free will because it's just a bit too clunky. And then it's also not massively satisfying when you're exploring to tick off a side quest. Like it never feels like properly rewarding. And I mean, not like it's good, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
There are frame rate issues with this game, which we obviously saw in Link's Awakening. They're back in abundance in Echoes of Wisdom, thanks obviously to the broader scale and ambition in this game. It's not the end of the world, but it is annoying when it sort of feels unnecessary because it's targeting 60 frames per second. And was it you were saying about how I don't know, like it's a type of processing where instead of like dropping from like 60, 59, 58, it just goes, if it can't do 60, it then goes to 30. If it can't do 30, it then goes to 15.
It's in the past, games used to default more to just the screen would tear. You'd have that weird kind of like half image for a split second. And more games now have like a hard sync for vertical sync, so you don't get tearing. So you get a smoother image, but it means that when a frame rate drops, you're then essentially halving it every time because you've missed kind of the window to get the next frame on screen. So you have to wait for the next refresh, and it's not ideal. I think in more powerful consoles, you can kind of brute force your way through that. But the Switch, in whichever kind of, implementation they're using there, it just means that as soon as you have a little blip that, potentially would just drop it just a frame or two for a split second, then you get that hard drop down to 30 until it kind of builds itself back up again 5 seconds later, or however it kind of, manifests in Echoes. I'm sure it's a very frustrating thing because it was quite annoying in Link's Awakening, and I was far more. I wasn't too bothered by it then because it was just like, oh, but it's just a fun little game, isn't it? But I think over time, it's like more and more that I understand things a bit more and kind of how it's functioning. It makes you think like there was a solution there and you didn't take it. Like actively, you've chosen not to take it. And that's the bit that I think is more annoying when it's like there was a way to sort this out. At the very least, the easiest solution would be cap it at 30, make it so that when the Switch 2 rolls around, it just uncaps itself. Like it would be that simple, and no one would whinge, and it would just be like, oh, 30, okay, and that would be it. That would be the end of the discussion, as opposed to instead of it going out and everyone being like, yeah, it's quite annoying. I see that lurching, jerky movement, but anyway, carry on.
I mean, look, you've covered about 6 things I was about to say. Like it's it's like the few sections that do run at 60 frames per second are really stunning. It's I hope that it is something that gets a beefy patch for the Switch, too. The Nintendo Switch. Steve McLaren there, isn't it? Yes. I never get old. It would be great if it did get a beefy patch for Switch 2 to have it all running at 60, because like the aesthetic in this game is just stunning. It looks wonderful. It's great, just great design. Well, I'm talking about that as well. The soundtrack for Echoes of Wisdom is really fantastic. It's fully orchestrated. It's got like big tunes sort of returning, following like the more subtle minimalist scoring of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. The game sounds amazing. It's really brilliant. Yeah, it's a real treat for the ears. And because I was playing through it with Nora watching me, I played through actually most of the game on the TV, which is a real rarity for me on the Switch.
Yeah, it's quite uncommon, isn't it, for you?
But it's it was lovely. But all in all, Echoes of Wisdom is a brilliant game. Like when it's really clicking, it feels like a total masterpiece. When it doesn't quite click, it still feels fine. But when you've got such benchmarks in this series that have come before, those adequate moments feel significantly less than adequate.
Yeah.
Like following on from like the DS Zelda games, which asked you to control the whole game via touchscreen, or Skyward Sword, which had you waggling your hands around for 40 hours, I did worry that like the echoes mechanic in Echoes of Wisdom could potentially feel like another gimmick-led Zelda game that's like, yeah, okay, that's great that you can do this, but just give me a proper Zelda game. But fortunately, it doesn't feel like that, and that is down to the brilliance of the puzzles and the dungeons. And even if the combat isn't as satisfying as other Zelda games, as a puzzle game, this is top tier stuff. Really, really good.